In 1897, three miners broke through a limestone wall in southwestern Wisconsin and found themselves staring at something that would rewrite human history. Before them lay 7 skeletons, each measuring between 8 and 10 feet tall, arranged in a perfect circle around a stone altar covered in unknown symbols. Within 48 hours, federal agents arrived, cordoned off the cave system, and every piece of physical evidence vanished into the Smithsonian's archives, never to be seen again. On March 15, 1897, near the town of Dubuque, Wisconsin, miners Jacob Hoffman, Samuel Perkins, and Michael O'Brien were excavating a new shaft when their pickaxes struck hollow ground. The limestone gave way, revealing a hidden chamber that had been sealed for what geologists would later estimate at several hundred years. The air that rushed out was described in Hoffman's personal journal as ancient and metallic, like breathing in electricity itself. What they found inside would haunt them for the rest of their lives, though only O'Brien would live long enough to speak about it in his final years. The chamber stretched approximately 60 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling reaching 25 feet at its apex. The walls showed evidence of advanced tool work, geometric precision that seemed impossible for the reported technology of pre-Columbian America. But the true shock came from the inhabitants. 7 massive skeletal remains, each positioned with mathematical precision around a central stone platform. The smallest skeleton measured 7 feet 8 inches, while the largest reached an astonishing 10 feet 2 inches, as documented in the miners' measurements that would later be published in the Dubuque Daily Herald before the article mysteriously disappeared from all archive records. Each giant possessed anatomical anomalies that defied conventional understanding of human evolution. Double rows of teeth lined their massive jaws, a feature repeatedly mentioned in indigenous oral histories but dismissed by mainstream science. Their skulls showed pronounced elongation, measuring 30% larger than modern human craniums, with eye sockets positioned slightly higher and wider apart. The bone density, according to Dr. Heinrich Müller, who briefly examined one femur before confiscation, was approximately 40% denser than modern human bone structure, suggesting adaptation to different gravitational or atmospheric conditions. The artifacts surrounding the skeletons told an even stranger story. Copper tools of unprecedented craftsmanship lay scattered throughout the chamber, but these weren't primitive implements. The metallurgical composition included trace elements of platinum and palladium, creating an alloy that modern metallurgists struggled to replicate. Most disturbing were the crystalline rods, roughly 18 inches long, that seemed to pulse with a faint luminescence even after centuries in darkness. O'Brien's journal mentions a humming sensation when touching these rods, and electromagnetic readings taken in 1898 by an independent researcher showed consistent energy signatures emanating from the sealed cave entrance until it was permanently concreted over in 1899. News of the discovery spread through local papers like wildfire, but the tone shifted dramatically within 72 hours. The Dubuque Daily Herald's initial sensational coverage suddenly transformed into dismissive skepticism, calling it a misidentification of prehistoric bare remains. The Madison Chronicle, which had sent a reporter and photographer to document the find, inexplicably pulled their story hours before publication. Eyewitness accounts described men in dark suits arriving on the 4th day, presenting federal credentials that local Sheriff Thomas McKinley described as unlike any government papers I'd seen before or since. The Smithsonian Institution's involvement began with a telegram sent to the Wisconsin Historical Society on March 19, 1897. The message, preserved in private collections, stated, "Halt all excavation immediately. Federal Archaeological Team, en route. Site designated as Native American Sacred Ground under federal protection." This was peculiar because the Native American Graves Protection Act wouldn't exist for another 93 years. Dr. Samuel Langley himself, the Smithsonian secretary at the time, allegedly traveled to Wisconsin personally, an unprecedented move for a man who rarely left Washington. Local witnesses reported seeing at least 20 men in suits entering the cave system with specialized equipment that looked more industrial than archaeological. Within 1 week, the entire cave system was declared structurally unsound and sealed with concrete, The official report cited imminent collapse danger, yet the limestone formations had stood stable for millennia. More suspicious was the military-grade fencing, erected around a half-mile perimeter, guarded 24/7 for 6 months, until the presence became normalized and then quietly withdrawn. The 3 original discoverers were offered substantial payments, equivalent to roughly $180,000 in today's currency, in exchange for signing non-disclosure agreements. Hoffman and Perkins accepted and disappeared into comfortable obscurity, both dying under unusual circumstances within 5 years. O'Brien refused the money and spent the rest of his life trying to tell the truth. The suppression extended beyond physical evidence. University libraries across the Midwest reported mysterious thefts of specific books and journals from 1897 to 1898. Newspaper archives showed systematic removal of particular pages from their bound collections. Professor Arthur Hollick of the Geological Survey, who had expressed interest in studying the site, received a formal letter from his department chairman threatening termination if he pursued unscientific speculation. The pattern was clear. Someone with significant resources and authority wanted this discovery erased from collective memory. The question remains, what were they protecting, and from whom? The cave discovery occurred just 3 miles from downtown Dubuque, a city whose historic district contains architectural anomalies that suddenly make sense when viewed through the lens of giant inhabitants. The old main building, constructed in 1857, features entrance doors measuring 12 feet tall and 6 feet wide, with doorknobs positioned at 5 feet 6 inches. Unusually high for average human use, the official explanation claims aesthetic grandeur. But this same pattern repeats in 43 other buildings constructed between 1840 and 1890 throughout the region. Why would economically struggling frontier towns invest in unnecessarily massive architecture purely for aesthetics? Basement excavations in Dubuque's commercial district reveal a pattern that historians struggle to explain. First-floor windows of 1860s buildings now sit 8 to 12 feet underground. The standard explanation involves street-level raising due to flooding, yet geological surveys show no evidence of catastrophic flooding requiring such dramatic elevation changes. More intriguingly, these buried floors show signs of habitation furniture anchors, stove placements, and living spaces designed for occupants significantly taller than average. The ceiling heights in these subterranean rooms measure between 14 and 18 feet, with structural supports suggesting they bore significant weight from above. The Great Dubuque Fire of 1880 destroyed much of the original city center, and the rebuilding effort followed curious specifications. Construction documents from the period, preserved in private collections after being lost from official archives, mandate ceiling heights of no less than 16 feet for commercial buildings and 12 feet for residential structures. Window placements began at 7 feet from ground level, creating what modern architects call uncomfortable spatial relationships for human occupants. Most revealing are the underground tunnel systems connecting major buildings throughout downtown passages with arched ceilings, reaching 15 feet, far exceeding any practical need for utility, access, or flood protection. St. Luke's Methodist Church, built in 1868, contains perhaps the most damning evidence. The original pews, removed during a 1920s renovation and stored in the church basement until their rediscovery in 1978, measured 9 feet long with seat depths of 28 inches, dimensions that would accommodate individuals 8 to 10 feet tall. The pulpit stood on a platform, elevating the speaker 6 feet above the congregation, with stairs featuring 14-inch risers, double the comfortable stepping height for average humans. When questioned about these anomalies, the Church Historical Committee claimed European design influence, yet no comparable examples exist in European architecture from the same period. The pattern emerges. Dubuque was built for giants, then hastily adapted when those inhabitants disappeared. Dr. Heinrich Muller's confiscated research notes, leaked by his grandson in 1974, revealed skeletal analysis that challenges everything we've been taught about human limitations. The femur bones of the Wisconsin giants showed extraordinary trabecular density, the internal honeycomb structure that determines bone strength. Modern human femurs can support approximately 30 times body weight before fracturing. The giant specimens showed structural capacity for 55 times body weight. This suggests either adaptation to much higher gravity than Earth provides, or evolutionary development in an environment with different atmospheric pressure. Müller calculated that beings of this size would require 40% more oxygen than current atmospheric composition provides for sustainable metabolism. The double row of teeth, documented in at least 4 of the 7 skeletons, presents another biological impossibility, according to conventional evolution. Modern humans develop one set of baby teeth and one permanent set, governed by specific genetic markers on chromosome 6. For a second permanent row to develop would require genetic expression that has been turned off in Homo sapiens for allegedly millions of years. Yet this trait appears repeatedly in giant skeleton reports from Wisconsin, Ohio, Nevada, and Arizona dating from 1850 to 1920. The only comparable modern examples occur in sharks and certain reptiles, creatures whose distant ancestors lived in dramatically different atmospheric conditions with higher oxygen content. The elongated skulls posed equally troubling questions that mainstream anthropology refuses to address honestly. Cranial deformation through artificial binding, the standard explanation, produces flattened and misshapen skulls, but cannot increase total cranial volume. The Wisconsin specimens showed 30% greater internal volume than modern human skulls, requiring significantly larger brains. Muller's calculations suggested brain masses between 2,100 and 2,400 grams, compared to the modern human average of 1,400 grams. This expanded cranial capacity would theoretically allow for enhanced cognitive processing, possibly explaining the advanced metallurgy and architectural precision found in Tartarian structures worldwide. The question becomes unavoidable. Were these beings intellectually superior to modern humans? The most suppressed aspect of Muller's research involved the crystalline rods found clutched in the hands of 3 skeletons. Chemical analysis revealed a silicon quartz matrix infused with trace amounts of gold and what Muller described as an unknown element producing weak but consistent electromagnetic signatures. These weren't decorative items, but functional tools, possibly related to the ether technology that powered pre-reset civilization. The rods showed where patterns consistent with regular handling, and one contained internal geometric patterns visible only under magnification circuits, or channels designed to direct energy. When Müller attempted to publish his findings in the Journal of Archaeological Science, his manuscript was rejected without peer review, and his university position was quietly terminated within the month. The message was clear. Some questions must never be asked publicly. The official narrative claims the Wisconsin specimens were respectfully reinterred according to Native American traditions, but no tribal records confirm this ceremony ever occurred. More credible accounts place the skeletons in the Smithsonian's vast underground storage facilities, where an estimated 80% of the institution's collections remain permanently hidden from public view. Research Eden Vieira has documented over 1,500 newspaper accounts of giant skeleton discoveries across North America from 1850 to 1940, with roughly 90% of specimens confiscated by the Smithsonian or disappearing after federal intervention. When pressed through Freedom of Information Act requests, the institution claims no records exist of these acquisitions. A statistical impossibility given the documented paper trail. The cave system itself was sealed with military precision, but seismic surveys from 1985 and 2003 reveal something extraordinary. The underground network extends at least 4 miles in multiple directions, with dozens of chambers showing similar dimensions to the original discovery site. Ground-penetrating radar indicates geometric precision in the tunnel layout, suggesting intentional design rather than natural formation. Local spelunkas report sealed entrances throughout the region, always marked with weathered federal property signs that carry no agency identification. The question emerges: how extensive was the underground city? And does the government know exactly what remains down there? The mudflood theory provides a coherent explanation that academia refuses to consider. If a catastrophic event buried an entire civilizations under meters of mud and sediment in the late 1800s, the giants would have either perished or retreated deeper underground into existing tunnel networks. The architectural evidence supports this. Buildings designed for 10-foot inhabitants suddenly being used by 6-foot survivors who simply adapted the existing infrastructure. The timing aligns perfectly. The 90s saw unprecedented federal intervention in archaeological sites across North America, always following the same pattern: discovery, confiscation, suppression. This wasn't random. It was systematic elimination of evidence that would expose the Great Reset. Perhaps most disturbing is the possibility that descendants still exist in the deepest underground networks, maintaining their ether technology and observing our surface civilization. Reports of underground humming and unexplained electromagnetic anomalies cluster around sealed cave systems in Wisconsin, Ohio, and Nevaditha exact regions with the highest concentration of giant skeleton discoveries. Military interest in these areas continues. Classified Deep Underground Military Bases, DUMBs, operate in proximity to historical giant discovery sites with remarkable consistency. Are these installations protecting us from what's below, or protecting what's below from our questions? The answer may determine whether we're the inheritors of Earth, or merely its current tenants, occupying spaces built by those who came before. The evidence remains buried, but the questions won't stay underground forever. What other discoveries has the Smithsonian locked away? Have you noticed impossible architecture in your own city? Drop your experiences and theories in the comments below. The truth depends on people like you refusing to forget what they want erased from history.